My guest today and we met a few years ago at a restaurant in LA. He was dining with NFL great Fred Dreyer and a mutual friend of ours. Larry, I don't even know if you remember that or not, but I will say this Larry Namer. Larry Namer is a legend. He's a co founder of E Entertainment Network. He's a kid from Coney Island who grew up in the New York area, obviously. He's responsible for launching the careers of many of today's pop culture superstars from Howard Stern to the Kardashians. Larry, great to have you on the show. Thank you for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, it was actually dinner with Fred and Janine Madsen, Michael Madsen's ex.
Yes, 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 and I know she's going through a lot now with just losing him.
Yeah, yeah, it's terrible.
But may he rest in peace. You grew up in Brooklyn in a family of immigrants. Your dad drove a Pepsi truck, I believe, and your mom was a social service director or worked in social services. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and your upbringing, such as, even were you possibly even bar mitzvahed?
Sure. It's I grew up in Brooklyn before it was trendy Brooklyn. I grew up in Coney Island, which is still the hood. That part of Brooklyn hasn't been gentrified yet. and we found out in later years that we were poor, but when we grew up, we didn't know it. Because everybody was pretty much the same on the block, and it was a very diverse neighborhood. Um, it was very mixed between African American, Caucasian, and Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and so we grew up in this very mixed culture. And we would play in the street, and we're all friends, and we played football together, and baseball and all of that stuff. and but my parents had that very immigrant mentality, which was their kids are going to do very well whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
So they were pretty demanding on going to school, and they made sure I was the first kid in the family to go to college. But other things. When I was 12 years old, I was expected to have a summer job. I didn't get summer in camp or anything. My summers were spent working my dad on a Pepsi Cola truck loading cases into luncheonettes all around Brooklyn.
So you learned pretty quickly how to work, that's for sure. I believe you went to, in school, you went to the same school as, did I read Neil Diamond and Louis Gossett Jr.?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because the school, Abraham Lincoln High School, um, served a relatively poor neighborhood. Again, we didn't know it. Um, but you think of the people that came out of there: Neil Diamond, Neil Sedaka, Lou Gossett, um, uh,
Oh,
Mel Brooks, you name it, they came out of that school. And it's actually interesting because while it was a public school in a poor neighborhood, even today there are more Nobel Prize winners that have come out of that high school than any other high school in America.
oh.
And other than maybe there was something in the water, there's no real rational explanation for it, other than the fact we all, the common fact that we were all children of World War II veterans and stuff, and they were tough on us. They expected us to do a lot and assimilate. My dad's family spoke Spanish as their language, and but they would never speak in front of us. They would never teach us. And my father's thing, you're going to be an American kid as quickly as possible. And now, particularly living in California, I'm going, boy, I wish I really learned Spanish well.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, but I know you know other languages, and we'll get into that in a minute. There's so much to cover here. You are an amazing man and so humble, and I really, once again, I just appreciate you being here. I'm going to fly through a few things because there's really so much to cover with Larry.
Sure.
After you graduated from Brooklyn College, can you tell us about your first job working underground with the Rats in New York? I know you were. That's I mean it's a great story, especially to where you are nowadays.
Yeah, I graduated with a degree in economics, and I quickly learned there aren't many jobs for people with degrees in economics. So I took what I thought was going to be a summer job. I knew somebody who was in the electrical workers union, and they said, "Hey, we organized this thing called cable TV. I'm not really sure what it is, but here's the name of the shop steward. Go tell them that the union sent you and to give you a summer job or a temp job." And I figured I would do it for a few months, and then I'd figure out what I do with my degree in the rest of my life. But so they gave me a job as an assistant. I wasn't even the underground splicer. I was the assistant underground splicer, and $90 a week. And every day at 8:30, you go on the streets of Manhattan. You lift the manhole covers. You go into the sewers and you put the wires together. And you come up at 5 o'clock and you go home. Um, and so that's kind of the way I started. But along the way, it still didn't become obvious what I was going to do with my economics degree. But very quickly, the folks in charge said, "Hey, how did you learn how to use the equipment so quick? It usually takes people 6 months, and you're doing it in 6 days." And I was like, I read the instruction booklet. I mean, it was like rocket science. So I graduated very quickly from being an assistant splicer to a splicer. Um, and then they promoted me to construction guy, which meant climbing through the backyards, and then an installer, then a service tech, and then that was kind of my path on that side. And then they actually put me in the office. It's still in the union, and I was working in the office and basically organizing the dispatch functions and stuff, which was somewhere, between being a union guy and a management guy, because you're now in the office where, it was mainly people coming. At that time, Time Inc. bought the company. So Time was a publishing company. And they had made a decision that over a 10-year period, they were going to migrate from being publishing to being media.
Hmm.
And it was great for me to be there, because here I am working in the office as a union person, and now you have all the Harvard and Yaleys there, and they're trying to figure out what it is they when they bought Manhattan Cable. They're trying to figure out what did they buy and what do these people do when they go under the city every day and they don't come up, till 8 hours later. And then somebody in HR said, "Wait a second, there's a guy with an economics degree." Um, so I kind of became that interface between management and the union guys. And then it got really interesting because I was 23 years old,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
when timing for the company, there was a contract negotiation, and so you had all these very sophisticated Ivy Leaguers, on that side, and then the union guys, the shop steward said, "Hey kid, you know how to read and write. We're going to put you on the negotiating committee so you could tell us what it is they're trying to say to us." I said, "Okay, that's fine." So the thing was very successful. We did a very successful contract, and after it, the head of the union came down and said, "Hey, we love what you did. We're going to make you a union official." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" So they
What's
ended up,
that?
again, 23 years old. They made me the vice chairman of the cable TV workers in the electrical workers union. And, it was crazy that, I would have such a high union job, and then it kind of more solidified my relationship with the Time Inkers, because now if they wanted to change shift hours or anything, they had to come and talk to me.
Yeah.
And then eventually they said, "Hey, why don't you come into management?" And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. But then, they made me the proverbial offer I couldn't refuse. And I think I was 25, I just turned 25. They made me the director of operations.
Yeah.
And
Corporate development, right?
well, that was after.
Oh, that
But
was
I was
after.
the head of yeah, I was the head of operations, and then all those departments that I worked for now reported to me. And
Unbelievable.
25, everybody who worked for me was older, and I had over 300 people reporting to me then. So all the guys that worked underground reported to me, the construction guys, the service guys. So all the operational
My
departments, not
gosh.
not finance, not marketing, not programming. So we and then when Timing really decided to delve deeply into becoming a media company, they wanted to buy this company out from Denver called ATC, which was at that point the largest cable company in the country, and so they moved me from being director of operations in Manhattan to being director of corporate development. And my job was to think of now we're going back to 19 late 70s.
70s.
Think about the year 2000 and the relationship between people and technology, and
Mm.
basically look for other uses of cable television wires other than just providing new channels. So, pre-internet, I was doing remote medical diagnostics, moving data up and down, urban cities, and all kinds of information services and stuff like that. So, um, then it came so that all the big cities began to realize that cable could do more than just provide good reception. And all the big cities wanted to have cable, and the city of Los Angeles granted a franchise to a Canadian company to build the first 61 channel two-way interactive cable system ever
Was
built
that Valley Cable?
in the Valley Cable.
Okay. So
And
yeah, so you came to LA. I mean,
well,
it
I
goes
came
on and on, but
I came to LA kicking and screaming actually, because what happened was, the LA franchise um, insisted that all the wires go underground. Well, the only underground cable system in the country was Manhattan Cable, and I'm the guy who built it. Or well, I reported to somebody, but I was the head of operations in charge of building that system. And so they kept calling me through a recruiter, and I'm going, listen, I'm a Brooklyn kid. I ain't going to La La Land. I'm just not doing that. And then finally, the chairman of this Canadian company called me and said, hey, um, we really want to talk to you. And I said, I have no interest. There's no way I'm doing this. He goes, well, do you have a girlfriend? I went, yeah. He goes, okay, I fly you and the girlfriend out to LA, first class, but in the Bel Air Hotel. You have a car, for the weekend, and I want an hour of your time. And I'm like, as long as you realize there's no way I'm taking this job. I said, fine, we'll do it. So, I came out and we did it, and I was like a total ass, going, okay, you got 60 minutes, 59, 58. And then at the end, I said, okay, your hour's up. I got to go. The guy said, well, what would it take for you to move out here? So I named like four times what I make in New York. And I said, I understand Liberace is moving from the Valley to, to Las Vegas. I said, I want you to rent his house for me, because that house with the camera shaped swimming pool was on Entertainment Tonight every night.
chutzpah.
And I said, I want a car with a mobile, before cell phones. I said, I want a car with a mobile phone. And the
Oh
guy
my.
looked at me, he goes, you're out of your mind. I went, exactly. I said, I told you that before you flew me out here. And, I went back to New York, and it was the winter. And, New York is beautiful for the first hour that it snows. And
Yeah.
then after that, it's like black slush. And, I'm coming to work, and the cab comes by and splashes me. And I'm going, you know what? LA really
Yeah.
wasn't that bad. Why was I such an idiot? And then, I get to the office, and, the assistant says to me, oh, that guy from Canada called you again. And I'm like, okay, get him back on the phone. I go, yeah, what did you want? He goes, what you asked for is ridiculous, but how fast could you be here? Yeah, and then I'm going, okay, I have my foot in my mouth. So that's how I ended up in LA.
It's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, what you've done with your time, and also it seems like all along, like, and this has been you, I think, even to now. It's like, hey, things just happen, which is great. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, it's a lot of hard work. I get it, but I want to talk a little bit more. So when you got to LA and Valley Cable, that was the first two-way what is it, interactive cable system in the United States, I believe I read.
Yeah, it was the biggest cable system and first 61 channel two-way interactive cable system. And when I got out there, now I had obviously all the operating things, but now programming reported to me, marketing reported to me, finance reported to me. And again, I think I just turned 30 or 31, so I was still a kid. And but it was interesting because at that time there weren't 61 channels out there. So we would get character generators, and we would put up the school lunch channel and the library channel and the city government channel. And but what happened and what kind of led to E was, I'm looking at all of my neighbors and people going to parties and premieres and all this stuff to do with Hollywood. So I call up the studios and say, "Hey, I want to be on the list." And they were like, "Nah, you guys, you're like a utility. You're like the gas company. We're not putting you on the list." So finally, I met someone that was in marketing. I think it was Universal. And I said, "Yeah, I got a question for you. The most efficient vehicle you have for promoting a movie is the movie trailer, that 2-minute movie trailer." I said, "But the only time I ever see the movie trailer is when I'm in the movies." I
Mm.
said, "Wouldn't you want me to see that when I'm in the house so it make me want to go to the movies?"
Wow.
And he
Smart
goes,
idea.
"Yeah, no, you're right, but it's very expensive. We can't do it." I said, "Tell you what, you send me the trailers. I'll put them on TV for free. You put me on the list for the parties and the premieres." And he went, "Sure, and we'll do that." So they did it, and we just strung them together, and we gave the thing a name, the Trailer Channel. And but we started doing surveys. They go, "What's your favorite channel?" And people go, "I love CNN, I love ESPN, I love that Trailer Channel." And I'm sitting there going, that's interesting. I'm getting the best 2 minutes of a $50 million movie. Then movies were only 50. Um, I get those for free, and people absolutely love it. It's one of their favorite channels. So when the company that I work for, which is Canadian, they sold out, and they said, "Larry, we sold out. Everything's great. When could we expect you up in Toronto?" And I was like, "No, no, no, no." I said, "I didn't go from New York to LA to go to Toronto." I said, "I'm done with the cold." So me and my friend Alan Marupka, we said, "Let's think of some ideas to keep us both." He was from the East Coast too. We said, "Let's come up with something to keep us both in LA." It's kind of nice, particularly in the winter. And so, Alan was going, "Yeah, you were doing that thing with the movie trailers, and I've been playing around with an idea about celebrity interviews and stuff." So we just started noodling the idea, and we came up with saying, "This is MTV in the movies." If you go back to that point, we looked at it and said, "Hey, that cable TV was kind of like an electronic newspaper. You had ESPN was the sports, and CNN was the headline, and Home Shopping was the ads. But what was conspicuously absent was the second most read part of any Sunday paper, which was the entertainment section."
Right.
So we said, we're going to create the entertainment section of the cable TV newspaper. So, we're going MTV of the movies or Entertainment Tonight 24 hours a day. We wrote a plan, and we thought we were brilliant. And at that time, the going rate to start a TV network was somewhere between 60 and $100 million.
Yeah.
And we went around to people, and they go, "You know what? It's a good idea, but people don't start TV networks. Only big media companies can start TV. You're not Fox, you're not Disney. You can't do it." And I guess we weren't smart enough to listen, and we just kept going. 3.5 years later, having not raised 10 cents and being rejected almost 100 times in meetings, all with the same thing. It's a good idea, but people won't start TV networks. Go away. And so finally, somebody we met said, "Oh, I know this guy that just took over investment banking um,
Oh,
at
yeah.
Bond House,
Great story.
and go see him. I know he's looking for deal flow." So we make an appointment. We go there, and it's a young guy, and he's got movie posters on the wall. And Alan and I are looking at each other, going, "This is strange." And the guy's like, "Oh, I used to be the entertainment reporter for my college newspaper, and I really love this, and I want to do it." And I'm like, "That's great. Well, could you give us more like the 100 million so we can do everything we want?" And he goes, "Oh, no, no, no." He goes, "I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5." And I go, "What?" I go, "The minimum is 60. We really need 100. And you're telling me you want to do it for 2.5." I said, Al and I just looked at each other and said, "You know what? Nobody's giving us that money." We just took the $2.5 million literally that day.
Take it.
And I had a friend who was teaching radio, television, film at University of Texas in Austin. And I called him up and said, "Brian, you got kids who need intern jobs?" And he went, "Yeah, we had trouble placing." I said, "Send me all you got." So, and people don't realize because he's a monster now. It's the largest influence in pop culture in the world. It's in
Yeah.
142 countries, and it's crazy. And so, people don't realize, looking at E now, that E started with 11 employees and 31 interns.
An
And
interns.
my friend wanted to kill me because these kids came at the beginning of the summer, they're interns, and then as soon as it went on the air, everybody said, "Oh my God, why didn't you tell us that's what you wanted to do? We would have given you the money 3 years ago." And these kids who started out the summer as interns, by the end of the summer, half of them were vice presidents, which we literally grew that quickly.
Yeah, I heard they never left. And let me just say this because the audience, if you have to be living under a rock not to know E Entertainment. Um, you really launched some successful careers with it. The shows and careers, E News, the Howard Stern Show, Fashion Police, Talk Soup, the Kardashians. I mean, it's pretty incredible idea that you guys came up with. How did you? Because I know it was like, wasn't it called? I think it was a movie time or something
We
originally.
started out as movie time, relying mainly on the movie trailers.
Mm-hmm.
And, and to Alan and I, it was very simple. If you just looked at MTV and you looked at what they did in their business model, early MTV, when they actually showed music videos, they were getting the best music videos that the record companies were producing for them. And they were standing a host in front of a green screen and going, and Madonna has a new video. Or Michael Jackson has a new video. And we said, you know what? We could stand a host in front of a green screen and show the trailer and go, and Schwarzenegger has a new movie. I said, basically, it's the same exact model. And, we were getting the best 2 minutes of a $50 million movie for free and standing a host in front of a screen, which cost us almost nothing. And people were loving it. And so, we started out that way with the trailers, but then once we got a little bit of traction, again, we grew to 14 countries in the first year because
So
love of celebrities and celebrity gossip and Hollywood intrigue and stuff is a worldwide phenomenon. It's not a U.S. centric
yeah.
thing. So we grew incredibly fast, and then we said, okay, we could start doing like time anchored programming, but we didn't have enough money to do a lot. So the first show um, was Talk Soup. And when Alan and I came up with that, we're talking to our programming folks, and they're looking at us going, "Guys, you want to do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, exactly." Um, because we were not part of the Hollywood community, we weren't taking it very seriously. We were going, Hollywood is funny stuff. Let's not make believe it's more than that.
Yeah.
And so with Talk Soup, Greg Kinnear was the first host. Greg went on
Can
to
you
be
tell
on.
the story about Greg Kinnear? How you got? I mean, how he was working in the office there. Can you tell that story?
Oh, sure. People always say, "Oh, you were so lucky you had all those great hosts." We had Greg Kinnear and Julie Moran went on to the Wide World of Sports, and Sam Rubin went on to, be the Hollywood news
KCAL.
guy, and Richard Blade went on to do K Rock, and on and on and on, and Katie Wagner, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. That was not an accident. We said, you know what, with limited money, the best thing we could do is be very, very careful how we select the hosts. So we actually, to get the first five hosts, we put over 7,000 people on tape
Seven
until we
thousand.
finally got it. And we were close to going on air, and we had none. We were at zero, and we really didn't have a lot of workers. So I would go around pitching movie companies that they should advertise, going, what better place to advertise your movies than on a TV network that's about the movies? And so I had an appointment to go to this little independent film company. It does two or three $50,000 movies a year, and it's like an early morning, and it's like raining out. So I go straight to this office, and the receptionist says, "Oh my God, we've been trying to call you and tell you not to come." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, Mister whatever the head of marketing's name was, um, is not feeling well, so he's not coming in." And so we wanted to tell you, you didn't have to come. And I said, "Ah, man," I said, "I got all this material I wanted to give to him and stuff like that." I said, "Is there anybody here who could make a decision?" She goes, "No, not really." I go, ah, damn. I said, okay, I'm going to leave. So I'm ready to go, and it's pouring out. And I said, you know what? I'm here. I go back to the receptionist. I go, is the assistant here? I'll leave the stuff with him. And she goes, yeah, he's here. So I go in and I'm talking to this young guy. And every time I'm going now, we could put you between the Schwarzenegger trailer and the Madonna video and da 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 da. You know, I'm doing my selling song and dance. And he's going, well, who's going to be the host? I'm going, we're interviewing people and whatever. And, I keep going in my pitch. And he goes, I think I could do that. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you can and whatever. I said, well, what were you like in your college drama class or something? And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah. I'm going, yeah, that figures. You look it. And we go through the whole thing. And he says, I really want to come and audition. So I want to sell advertising to this company. I'm like, yeah, come Tuesday, 2 o'clock, go see Eileen. Eileen will put you on tape and good luck. So I tell Eileen, I said, this guy's coming in. I said, I don't even care if you have tape in the camera. Be nice. I'm trying to sell advertising to his company. Anyway, the day comes and she comes and says, oh, that guy is here and he wants to say hello. I said, Eileen, I'm really busy. I don't really have time. So she goes back and says, he's really insistent that he comes and say hello. I said, Eileen, I'm trying to figure out how I make payroll on Friday because we have no money. I don't have time. I said, I'm sure you want to get paid on Friday. Be nice to him, take him in, shoot him, and send him on his way. She comes back like 10 minutes later. She goes, Larry, we're in the studio and he really wants to see you. I said, Eileen, just cue him and put him on tape. Leave me alone. And she comes back again. She goes, come in the studio. I said, Eileen, what was it about get the hell out of here that you didn't understand? And she goes, Larry, come in the studio. I mean, literally takes me by the ear. And we're walking down the hallway, and I'm mumbling under my breath. I'm going, Eileen, I can't believe you're doing this. I'm going to kill you. And if I miss payroll on Friday, I'm blaming it all on you. And we go in the studio, and she's got Greg in front of the camera, and I'm cursing. And she cues him, and I just look up and I said, holy shit. I said, hire this kid. And we did.
What was it about him? Because you had
They lit the
7,000 other
camera up.
people.
Lit the camera up. When
Wow.
he came on, he was so natural and so believable and so lovable. I mean, he
Larry,
was
how do
like,
you Larry, how do you figure that with 7,000 people that you auditioned and interviewed, and here's this one Greg Kinnear who gets on? How does that work? I mean, it's just the magic, right?
yeah, it's the crew, Eileen and her crew would kind of screen them and then say, here's 5 people we think may be good, and I'd look at those, and I obviously didn't look at all 7,000, but
Right.
Greg was the first one we hired, and what was funny is when um, Greg had the hardest time reading teleprompter. All the other folks were great at teleprompter, and the production people would constantly complain to me. They go, "Look, we're having trouble. This Kinnear kid can't read the teleprompter. We have to keep reshooting him." I said, "Well, why do you reshoot him?" And they go, "Well, because it looks terrible when because he makes a mistake and he stops and he makes a face and whatever." I said, "You know what? We're so young. We're such a young network. Probably the only people watching us are like his relatives." I said,
Yeah.
"Just keep running, keep going live."
Yeah.
And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Just keep rolling." They said, "Even when he makes a mistake," I said, "Yeah, he'll eventually get to the point where he'll be embarrassed enough in front of his family that he'll learn how to read the teleprompter." And then so they would do it, and at the beginning he would kind of get stumped, and then he would see that we didn't stop, and he would just pick up. But all of a sudden, I started getting like 10 letters from like women around the country going,
Like,
"Oh my God, that Greg Kinnear, when he makes a mistake and he rolls his eyebrows, he's so cute." And I'm going, "Really?" The next week, I get like 50 letters. And the next week, I get 200 letters. And people just fell in love with him. And it was his being so natural and
yeah.
so accessible. People related to Greg there, and they loved him, and that was
Well, you discovered him. You discovered him, and he was, he's been an Oscar-nominated actor, and he's done some. I mean, it's really incredible, and I just want to. I just want to say, I want to back up just for a quick bit because there's another story I want you to tell. It's great. You've got so many great stories, and I know we're limited on time, but I want you to tell the story about when you were building out and you climbed the fence at the Oscars. You've got to tell that story. It's classic.
Yeah, when we started again, we didn't have a lot of money. We were a little cable network, and I mean, we didn't even have professional cameras. We found some companies selling off the equipment that they used to make their sales training tapes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
everything we shot looked so pirate because it wasn't on broadcast level cameras. But anyway, we applied for credentials to go to the Academy Awards, and we got rejected. And we had this very nasty note going, "Oh, you're some dumb little cable network. No, we're not giving you credentials. Don't bother us anymore." And we went, you know what? Screw them. And literally, we went with the crew. We climbed over the fence. We got on the red carpet, and we're walking around filming and stuff like that. We got caught, and they threw us out. But we had so much great footage, and and again, taking that irreverent attitude, there was still, people would fight for 20 seconds on Entertainment Tonight, and it would be, "So, Mr. Cruz, tell us about your next movie." And we were like, "Whoa, Tom, those are amazing shoes. Where'd you get those?" And, people would watch it, and we start getting, comments and going, "Oh my God, that was so amazing. It was like we felt like we were flying on the wall watching something we're not supposed to." And we're like, "Yeah, okay." That's exactly right. So we kind of became very pirate there. And,
Mhm.
again, when you have 24 hours a day, you could cover stuff in a lot of depth, and you could take a lot of chances on stuff. And we figured at that point, when we were covering Jaws, we sent the guy to Hollywood Boulevard in the shark, walking around in the shark costume, interviewing people and stuff. We just didn't take it terribly seriously.
Yeah, I mean, you took a lot of chances, and then when you started getting people on, this is a great story, and you have to tell this one too. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to have you tell stories, and then I'm going to get into Larry's book. We're going to talk about a lot here.
Sure.
Can you tell the Jack Lemon story about about? I mean, you know it. I don't need to say it.
Yeah. So, that time, we were using a studio. It was the Hollywood Railroad Station, which we converted into a studio. I mean, even to the point where our sound booth was the closet in the conference room. I mean, it was really pirate. But we took the loading dock and the warehouse and we turned it into the studio.
Yeah.
And what at that time, Jack Lemmon was big. Jack was a great big star, but he was also known for not doing a heck of a lot of interviews and stuff and promotion and stuff like that. So, when I talked to Jack's manager, I said, "Hey, Jack's got a new movie. I'd love to get him on." And he said, "No, Jack doesn't do that stuff. He's not going to do it." I go, "Really?" I said, "Well, what does Jack do?" He goes, Jack likes to, be a little bit behind the scenes and he loves playing the piano and stuff like that." I said, "Okay, tell you what." I said, "I'll put a piano on the set. Jack could come and he could play the piano for an hour and nobody will talk to him." So the manager goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'll clear the studio. Jack could sit there and play the piano. He doesn't have to say a word. Nobody will ask him a single question." And the manager said, "Well, can you guarantee that?" I went, "Yeah, I guarantee it." So, I told everybody, I said, "Just leave him alone. Just carry on." So we rented a piano and we had on a set, and he came in. And for about the first 30 minutes, you could tell he was cautious. He was going, "Okay, they definitely lied to me about nobody's going to talk to me," waiting for someone to come in and start
Yeah.
asking him questions. But he was playing the piano and he just got so comfortable that after about a half an hour, he just turned to the camera and started to talk. And he talked about all the things that everybody wanted to ask him that he would never do these public appearances. And he just went on. And then when it went on the air, everybody in Hollywood, every manager, every agent would go like, "How did you get Jack Lemmon to do that?" And we just left him alone and let him do whatever he wanted. So that kind of opened it up. Then all of a sudden, every manager was going, "Hey, so and so has so proud of her clothes, and why don't you come and check out her closet?" And so it kind of the floodgates opened for us after the Jack incident.
Yeah, it's amazing story, and there's so many stories, and I just want to get into a few different things. Well, first of all, it's really incredible how there's a story about you only had like $60 left in your bank account.
I was
So
down to
so how
sixty
you went
dollars.
from huh
At $60 and a pregnant wife.
$60 and a pregnant wife, and how you turned $60 into multi billions of dollars. Pretty incredible story, my friend. I mean, it's really, you want to talk about a Hollywood success story or any success story. It's something else. But you don't stop there. I mean, we could talk about entertainment until we're blue in the face. There's so much you've done, so many different things, from sitting on boards to charities and this and that and what have you. And like I said, my time is limited with you. I'm already going to pitch you to come back, but I have a lot. I have a lot to ask you, sir.
Sure.
Can you share about your work in Russia?
Sure. I was still at E, and I had a lawyer friend in LA who had some clients that were in the merchant banking field. And he said, Larry, they were just in Russia and somebody proposed a deal to him, and it's a media related deal. They don't really know if it's good, and I don't know if it's good. Would you go there with them and tell me what you think? I was like, go to Russia? Yeah, sure. I said, I'll do that. I mean, in a million years, I never thought I would go to Russia. It was still the Soviet Union when I
Yeah.
went. And so I went there, and again, still at E, and I the deal they were looking at made no sense whatsoever. It was like for some crazy thing, but I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the people, and you could sense that things were about to change. That the Soviet Union was going to fall apart and all of that. So so I was there, and again, the people were incredibly gracious and stuff, and they loved the fact that an American was spending time there. And then I met the mayor of St. Petersburg, a guy named Anatoly Sobchak. And Sobchak said to me, he goes, we're not getting funding out of Moscow for the Children's Hospital and the orphanage. I want to start a music festival to raise money. Would you help me? And I'm like, I don't know music. I mean, that's not my thing. He goes, well, you got to know more than I do. I went, okay, that's probably true. So with the mayor of St. Petersburg, we started this thing called the White Nights Festival. So every June 16th to June 21st being the longest day of the year, we would do this music festival. We bring in the biggest artists from the West. Most people were doing it because they understood it was charity and stuff like that. So we had the who's who of music, acts there. And the story that people most like to hear, is when I was talking to David Bowie and going, David, you've got to, you really got to do this, and he's like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going, why? He goes, I don't like Russian people. I don't like Russian food. It's too cold. I'm trying not to drink. Blah blah blah. I go, David, these kids are starving. We got to help them. And he's like, for me to travel all that way to play another concert hall is just not interesting. I said, David, tell you what, there's a fort where all the czars are buried. All the rulers of Russia for the last 500 years are buried in one place. I said, I'll build a stage over their graves. You can dance on the graves of the czars. And he was like, okay, if you could do that, uh, I'll I'll do it. So I went back and told the mayor that I said I promised Bowie he could dance on the graves of the czars. And he went, yeah, whatever you need, it's fine. Just go tell the vice mayor. I said it's okay. And the vice mayor was a guy named Vladimir Putin. So, I got to know Mr. Putin very well. We did that. And we just had a great relationship because here I am doing, um, raising money for the children of the city that he grew up in. And literally, we donated 100% of the money went to the orphanage and the hospital. So we just got along fine, and there's never any conflicts or anything like that. So yeah, so that's the White Nights Festival started, and like I say, it was just an amazing time. I mean, we brought over 300 Western acts there, including Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr, which is the first Beatle ever to set foot in Russia.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, you've done so much, and then you also married the president of Russia's niece, didn't you?
Uh, yeah, I married Leonid Brezhnev, who was the head of the Communist Party in Russia for 25 years. Um, I married his niece, and we had we're separated, divorced for 20 years now, but um, we had a son, a little Sasha, and but yeah,
Yeah, that's incredible. And also, I read a story. You introduced Vladimir Putin to Henry Kissinger. I mean,
yes,
really something from this little kid, this little Jewish kid in New York. It's pretty incredible.
yeah. We were promoting the White Nights Festival, and we decided we were going to throw a big um, party at the Russian Tea Room in New York. And the mayor Sobchak was supposed to come, but he wasn't feeling well. So he said, "I'll send my wife and I'll send Vladimir, the vice mayor." And I literally had to go to the U.S. embassy and sign for Putin that if he got sick and needed to be hospitalized, I'd pay for the hospital and do all of that. But he came and we had Henry Kissinger there, and we actually introduced Putin and Kissinger, way back then.
Incredible. I mean, really, really, really incredible. And so you did all that, and you did that for Russia, and then China comes.
Yeah, what happened was when Putin kind of went up the ladder and became, the head of the whole thing, he realized that in order to build a consumer economy, people were going to look to, acquire particularly Western luxury goods, the Gucci's and the Pradas and the Ferraris and all of that, and that he had to make media look a little bit familiar to Western marketers who were going to start coming into the country. So they said, could you work with the Minister of Communications to rewrite regulatory policy for Russia? And it wasn't, again, not rocket science. It's like TV ads are 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, and not whatever you feel like today. So, but just basically putting it in order. And then what happened was the Chinese kind of came to that same conclusion. They loved the Russian model. Because the one thing we did when we did that with the Russians was there was always a very clear thing saying, here's the line that you should never step across. Stay out of politics and,
Mm.
just don't touch that kind of stuff.
Straight in your
So
own.
the
Yeah.
Chinese loved that model. They went to the Russians, and the Russians, saying, could you help us do this? And the Russians said, well, there's a guy that Vladimir knows in LA that did it for us. Here's his number. So I ended up getting called in by the Chinese government, an agency of the Chinese government.
Wow. I mean, it's really incredible because you did a lot of work from it. You reshaped, didn't you reshape their media to a certain degree?
Yeah, so we did the regulatory policy and stuff, and um, we they asked us. Um, they said, "Why don't you start a little media company here, so that we could learn from you?" And I said, "Well, you don't let Western media companies in here." And they went, "Well, we don't want the ones we don't like." And I'm going to go, "Okay, why are you going to be so nice to me?" And they said, "Look, it's really simple. We have a fight with Rupert Murdoch. It's the front page of the Wall Street Journal. We have a fight with you. We go out for drinks. We yell at each other for a day. The next day, we're good." I said, "We'd rather do it that way." I said, "Okay, but legally, I can't exist as a media company." So they helped us get set up as an experimental company, and we've been in China as an experiment for 16 years now.
It's incredible. I mean, look, there's so much to cover with Larry. We're going to try to get a few more really great things in here. But I wanted to like switch gears just for a little bit to talk about your book, Offscript: Recipes for Success. Larry, can you explain the book because it's not just a cookbook, it's not just a biography. Can you explain it to the audience?
Sure. Because both my parents worked, and when I was 12 years old, my choice was either learn how to cook or eat peanut butter and jelly for dinner every night. Um, so I started cooking, and then I said, "Hey, I really like this," and I read cookbooks and do all of that. And I just always loved cooking, and the whole food thing was always part of my life. So I studied Chinese food and French food. I literally buy a cookbook from every possible cuisine on the planet and study the book and learn how to cook it. And so people have been after me to write a biography or a memoir. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it because I'm not ready to write a last chapter yet. I'm just, it's just not interesting to me. And then, I said, you know what? I could literally break my life up into 7 or 8 different parts. My growing up in Brooklyn time, my Manhattan years, my Valley Cable years, my E years, my Russia years, my China years, and my COVID years, and stuff like that. I said, but the one constant that I've always had is this love of cooking. So I'm probably the only person in LA who's never been in therapy because when I get stressed out or frustrated, I go in the kitchen and cook. And it's my form of meditation. I could go have the worst day possible, and I go in, it's that process of chopping and cutting and matching colors and doing all of that. Just takes my mind. By the time I finish, my cooking, what had bothered me an hour before doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah. Don't you do that from like 6 to 8 p.m. every night,
Six
give or
to eight
take?
p.m. every night. Yeah,
It's
and
amazing. It's amazing. Can you tell the story of the OJ chapter, which is a good chapter? Everybody
sure.
seems to love that one.
Yeah, with Alan Marufka, my partner, um, would go out with all these young actresses and stuff like that. So he took an actress out to dinner named Tawny Katane, and he's going to take her home and drop her off. And he notices there's a car behind him, and he's looking, going, "Oh, that guy's following me." And she says, "Oh my God, it's this guy I go out with. He's really like followed. He'll drive away." So Alan goes around the block. The car goes around the block. So finally, she says, "Okay, I'm going to get out and stand in front of his car. He won't run me over, but you get out of here." So he does that, and it ends up the boyfriend or the guy she's going out with was OJ. And the next thing we know, OJ gets her to say who it is she was with, and he goes all around town to all the restaurants and the nightclubs and the bars, going, "I'm looking for this Alan, Marufka guy, and when I get him, I'm going to break his legs." And Alan moves to the Century Plaza Hotel, and he calls me up and tells me and stuff. So we end up, on the phone, with this number that OJ left, and he's like, you know, "Who are you? I'll break your legs too." And I'm like, and I'm a Brooklyn kid. I don't, that doesn't scare me. And finally, I just said to him, I said, "Listen, you know Blake Olson, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, why?" I go, "Well, and then Blake Olson's dad was the chairman of Hertz. And if you
Mm.
remember, Hertz was the biggest employer of OJ in his post NFL
Yeah.
career, the ads running through the airport and all
Hmm.
of that kind of stuff. And Blake was a childhood friend of Alan. And, we knew Blake really well. I said, we're good friends with Blake, Frank's son. And Frank is a pretty religious guy. I said, it wouldn't look good if your biggest employer, your biggest source of income, is going to beat up his son's friends because one of them went out with your mistress because he loves your wife. He loves Nicole. So all of a sudden it was like, "Oh man, this is a big mistake. Da, 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 da. Let's have
Oh,
lunch." And, heck with that girl. We can't let girls get in our way. And uh, so we ended up having lunch with OJ at La Scala Boutique in Beverly Hills. And it was funny because when I recounting the story, so the book is somewhere, it's the anecdotes from each time period mixed with the recipes that inspired me during each of those periods. And in doing it, I do the OJ story. I remember not just where we ate, I remembered exactly what I ate. So in the book is the recipe of the La Scala Cobb salad that I
oh my
had
God.
the first time I ever met OJ.
That's incredible. It's incredible. What's your favorite meal to cook nowadays?
When I'm looking to impress people, I'll do Chinese. Because another strange story. When I was in college, I took a job in Brooklyn delivering food to people's houses. So you go in the kitchen, you pick up the bags, you bring them to someone's house. Obviously, free Uber Eats. And I would always, of course, I love to cook. I would ask the chefs, "Teach me how to do this, teach me how to do that," and they just thought it was funny teaching the Caucasian kid how to cook Chinese. But I was good at it. I love cooking, and I was good at it, and I would practice at home. And then there was a Chinese New Year party, and they were having a big celebration at the restaurant. And it was a snowstorm, and three chefs didn't make it in. And the head chef just looked at me and goes, "You got to cook." And I'm like, "Really?" So I ended up cooking in a Chinese restaurant. I was the only non-Chinese face in the restaurant, and so I learned how to cook Chinese really well. And so when I'm looking to impress people, I'll do Chinese because I can do it as good as any restaurant on the planet.
Yeah, well, I'm always good for any of those famous Larry Namer parties. You even have a cooking show in China. Is that still going on?
No, no, I just didn't have the time to continue it. But we would go out to eat, and people would look at me and go, "Oh, let us show you how to use the chopsticks." And I'm going, "Let me show you how to use the chopsticks." And they go, "Well, we could explain that dish to you." And I go, "No, you don't have to explain it to me. I could cook that." And they were just amazed by it. And so they ended up. We did a four-part cooking show on Beijing TV, which was one of the big TV stations there, and the name of the show was loosely titled "The White Boy Cooks Chinese Food," and and it was fun. It was fun doing it, but it just took so much time. I said, you know what, I have like real work to do. Even though it is fun, I can't continue doing it.
Yeah, I'm busy with other things. Yeah. Well, where can the audience get the book? Where is it now?
Well, the easiest place is probably Amazon, and the book
Hmm.
is called Offscript: Never Follow the Crowd. It's available paperback. It's available Kindle. Um, we purposely brought the price of the Kindle way down. It's like $3.99, so that students can buy. It's less than
Great.
a coffee at Starbucks kind of thing. So
Great, great. Well, everybody go out and get a book, and it's a nice black book. It's beautiful, beautiful color, beautiful book. Great job on that, my friend. I wanted to just rattle off a few things. What's the secret to reinventing yourself every 7 years, Larry Namer?
I don't know. Maybe it's a form of ADD. Um, I just love challenges and stuff. And whenever there's a good one put in front of me, the thought of going off to Russia, and I mean, we had the number one TV show in Russia for 10 years.
Yeah,
Um, Russia, and that was the days where it was heavy duty mafia and bankers were killed in the streets, and there was an adventure. And then China, I just loved it. So it's really challenges that kind of keep me going. I mean, I'm totally into technology and artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And I think there's so much amazing stuff that I could do today that I didn't have the chance to do then. So I just kind of keep pushing forward.
yeah, Larry. I was going to ask you about that. What do you think about AI, especially now in Hollywood in the entertainment space?
Um, I was just explaining this to somebody before. In the days before laptop computers and word processing, we used to have to type a script on a typewriter. And if you made a mistake, you had this little bottle of whiteout, and you'd have to white it out, and it looked like garbage. And then all of a sudden, they created laptop computers and had word processing, and you no longer had to do that. Well, the people who made typewriters and made whiteout were not happy about it, but God was in a much more efficient way of being creative and stuff. The problem with AI, you can do good with it, you can do bad with it.
Hmm.
And we do not have a body of law yet that's been tested that lets people who want to do bad things know there are consequences for bad things. So
Hmm.
that's the downside. The upside, and I explain to people, if you were to say to me, Larry, could you do an analysis of whether we should have a TV network about pens or just whatever the subject is. It used to take me 5 days, to do the research and go, which channels could it be on, and how would I do it, and how would I time it, and who would be in it, and all that. It was a 5 day effort. Now, using AI, it takes me 30 seconds. I spend an hour cleaning it up. It's never 100%. It does not replace human creativity at all and never will, because it's not empathetic. It doesn't feel what we feel as human beings. Um, so and I say to people, so now in 1 hour, I get done what used to take me 5 days. I said, if I could ensure that I'm going to get paid the same for my 1 hour work that used to take me 5 days, I said, how do I not love that? I said, I could either do more of these and make more money. I could spend more time with my grandkid. I could go on a cruise in the Mediterranean. I've reclaimed the most valuable thing that we as human beings all have this finite amount of time on this planet. I said, I love it. Again, when the example I use with the AI, a kid who's 12 years old can't say, "Hey, give me the keys to the car. I feel like driving." You got to be a certain age. You got to take a course. You got to take a test to show that you can do it. And then there are rules of the road. And you know that if you don't obey the rules of the road, there will be consequences.
Yeah.
We don't have that for AI yet. Our legislators and stuff need to catch up with the technology because it's not going away.
Yeah, well, it's sticking around. So there's a couple of things I want to just do right now because I'm realizing your time is so valuable, and I really appreciate you being here. First of all, what's it like being a grandfather?
It's fun, it's really great because you get the best out of the kid, and when they poop or start crying, you can give them back.
That's great. I love it, and I love the fact that you are. Look, I have so many things that I want to ask you, but what I think I'll do is maybe ask you. We could do a maybe a as quick answer as possible. Some of them aren't going to be easy, but
Sure.
I believe you're already right now. Are you launching a late night television show with a female host? Is that still going on?
Yeah, yeah, it's going to come out in December. I can't tell you the network because the lawyers are still doing the paperwork.
Okay,
Um, but
you
yeah,
heard it here first.
there's no women in late night TV in
Yeah,
America. I mean, it's all guys, and it's the same dopey show. It's promotional. A host sits behind a desk, and there's a couch with two people sitting on it, and it's the so Tom Cruise, tell me about your next movie. But we found this gal um, out of 8 years ago. This Natasha Graziano was living in London, single mom, homeless.
mm, mm, mm.
You cut to 8 years later, she's living in Bel Air, life coaching Will I Am and Steve Aoki, and named the number one female motivational
Influential.
speaker in the
Yeah,
country.
wow,
And so I designed a late night show around her, which is called Natasha After Dark.
incredible.
And it's this very eclectic mix. It's not promotional, it's motivational, inspirational, and it's just very different than anything on there. And I think particularly after COVID, I want to go to sleep smiling.
Yeah.
I don't want any more bad news. I want to go. You know what? Tomorrow is going to be a better day than today, and stuff like that. So we built the show around that.
Oh, that's so great. I also want to mention in 2022, you received an Icon Humanitarian Award. You've also had many other awards. You're with so many charities, and you do so much. You sit on so many boards. You're a really interesting guy. I really do my digging when I have somebody on the show because I want to know a little bit more about them. And you are so you're so humble, my friend, and you really root and you always fight for the small guy. I really appreciate that.
Well, I still
You
think
know,
of myself as a small guy. So
well, you are. No, trust me. And with all the media, with what's going on in the media nowadays, and especially the slowness of Los Angeles and maybe in this country because so much media is going to other countries. What advice can you offer not only to the people starting out, but to the people that have been in it, the 40, the 50-year olds, the 60-year olds that maybe don't want to quit yet?
yeah. Well, first and foremost, learn AI and learn how to prompt. It's the most valuable thing you can possibly have, and those people who don't learn it will be the ones left behind. There's no question that AI is going to take the mundane jobs that are out there. But when it gets to the creative stuff and other things, it can't replace you. So
Yeah,
you got to figure out how you participate. But when it gets to the whole thing with LA, I try to explain that. I don't know why I'm the only one who sees it this way, but 100 and something years ago, if you wanted to make visual entertainment, you had to come to Hollywood. You needed big sound stages and expensive equipment and all of that. But then as technology kept bringing the cost down so much that people began to realize, hey, we don't have to go to Hollywood. We can make a TV show in Germany. We can make it literally anywhere. I mean, today I can take my iPhone and go to Nigeria
yeah,
and make a movie on my iPhone. I don't have to come to Hollywood. So I try to get across to people that Stop thinking of Hollywood as a geographic place. Think of it as a measure of creativity, a measure of quality and stuff. But it's not. People don't have to come here anymore. They can
Yeah, I
make
think you said it
something.
was a mindset.
It is. It's a total mindset and stuff. It's creating good visual entertainment, and it's a standard of quality.
Hmm. Well, it's a mindset. It's a work ethic. We know you've had that, and you still have it, and you continuously build. What do you? You have a podcast yourself, Stall Talk. That's out now, correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not on it, but a lot of gals in town that I'm friends with kept saying, Larry, you got to help us. We need a voice in media. You got to help us design it. So the podcast world I find is fascinating because there are no barriers to entry. There's no gatekeepers, and so you can experiment with stuff and you can do it very low cost. But the other thing with podcasting that I know most people think, oh my God, I can do this. I'll buy a camera for $40 and I'll put a ring light over my head and I'm a broadcaster. Um, when things begin, people are very forgiving of poor quality. But
Yeah.
and with any new technology, but as time goes on, the eye and the brain expects more and more and more in terms of quality. So with these gals that starting with Jenny Lee Harrison, I don't know if you remember Jenny Lee from. She was one of the stars of Dallas. She was one of the places in Summers on Three's Company. Who's a dear friend, and so I said, okay, I'll help develop the show. I said I've always had this fascination. You go out to dinner with a few couples, and one woman says, "I got to go to the restroom." I said, "You guys all get up and go." And the guys are sitting there like idiots going, where are they? What are they doing? What are they talking about in there? So, but it really is, it's almost a metaphor for this camaraderie that I think women share that guys, we don't get. I mean, we'll talk to each other about business, we'll talk to each other about sports, but we don't talk to each other about our feelings and
Hmm.
things like that. It just doesn't happen. So I created the show Stall Talk. Again, we don't shoot it in the bathroom, but it's about bringing out those that level of conversation that women are comfortable having with other women. So we have women of four different generations, from Jenny Lee is the baby boomer down to Gen Z, and then two in between, and they'll discuss any subject, and you can kind of get the differences that how they feel about things, but yet you always feel the sense of there's underlying love and respect that women have for each other.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Couple other things. One of my guests on the show was Ken Fuchs. He's the director of Shark Tank.
Oh, sure.
Um, is that a show that you would ever go on?
I don't like being in front of the camera, um, so probably no.
Okay, well, thank you for coming in here and being here. I really appreciate that. And he didn't ask me to ask you. I just asked because it's dealing with so many sharks and what have you. Um, you went from not being invited to parties. I got one more story here. You went from not being invited to parties, Larry, to being invited to every party out there now, and to dating every actress there is. Talk about that for a second.
Sure. Yeah, I was big, big, and I was much cuter in the days of the supermodels. Um, so I used to date them and stuff. And then, yeah, quite honestly, you get a little older, mature, and you realize that there's more to dating a woman than just how pretty she looks. And
Yeah,
but yeah, I get invited to everything. I'm up until COVID, I was almost uh, uh, a hidden figure. I just wouldn't
yeah,
go out. I wouldn't participate. I'm not in the right restaurants on the right days. And I just never really participated. But then, quite honestly, COVID changed me in
hmm
that thing. I just got so tired of being cooped up in the house and not doing. So then, after COVID, it's like people go, "Oh, there's a party here and a party there, and could you come and whatever?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. It gets me out of the house. I'll do it." So yeah, I'm much more social now, and I'm not a hermit anymore.
yeah. No, it's a beautiful thing. Well, you have so much going on, and I really, I just appreciate your time. You're so down to earth, and you know, we could talk for hours. I mean, I don't have your time right now, but I hope you will come back sometime. There's so much to talk about. Um, You one thing though that I did want to because it's you talk about mindset and all that. You do a self assessment every night. I read that, and can you explain that for any of us that are not actually doing it? And I think it's something that is probably so good.
Yeah, I wake up in the morning. I have 10 new ideas every day. Um, by the time I go to sleep, I realize that either all 10 or most of them were pretty dopey. And every night I look at saying, and again, you go back to how do you manage the most valuable thing you have, and that's time. So I look at everything that I'm doing and everything that I'm planning and doing and going, am I doing that because it's still valid and I should be doing it? Or am I doing it because my ego won't let me let go of it? And there are a lot of stuff that everybody does is it's I'm following my passion, and I put so much time into this, and I'm at the point where I go, you know what, it seemed like a good idea yesterday. Today, either I realized it was dopey, the environment had changed, I got a competitor, whatever it is, I can let go. Really, I go, you know what, next.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Well, so we know that people could pick up your book. It's on Amazon, you said, and other places. Just look for it. It's called Offscript. And if you love Hollywood, you love food, great stories, Larry has it all. Larry, is there anything else? I mean, there's a ton that I'd love to bring up, but I know I am only limited here with your time. But is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Sure, I think we'll have to schedule another round because there's a lot of new stuff that I'm doing that. Um, I'm involved in a big fashion play now, basically meant to disrupt the elitist fashion industry. They're going to hate me. Um, I just took over as chairman of this thing called the World Film Institute, which
Hmm.
I'm trying to build a global educational masterclass platform for anybody who wants to do video entertainment, education, commercials, whatever. Um, Basically level the playing field. Um, have master classes with the best of the best of the best in every aspect of our media world. But then use AI to bring it to people in different languages. I think we're up to 37 now.
Oh.
Um, and let's say I'm making this is my dream. Steven Spielberg teaches directing.
Hmm.
He does it in English, and by using AI in China, he'll be doing it in Mandarin. In Russia, he'll do it in Russian and stuff like that. And just think of the implications of taking really talented, creative people and giving them the resources and the tools that typically you can only get if you came to the United States before and went to an expensive film school.
I love that, and I also love that you're so easily approachable. And I know you don't do a lot of social media; other people do, but you're you're just an incredible guy. I am so fortunate to have you on the show. I have a great audience, and they're going to love what you're saying, and I definitely would love to have you back. So we'll definitely figure that out. Make sure you pick up a copy of Larry's book. It's very impressive. It's really good. And thank you, everybody, once again for rolling with Olin. We'll see you on the next one.
Right? Take care. Now we got to wait for